Welcome to episode 54 of the Mental Dietitian Podcast. I'm your host, Lynch-potter, and this one is actually an expansion from episode 4. So if you haven't listened to episode 4 was called Why Doing Uncomfortable Things Will Change Your Life. So it's an expansion on that. And on that episode, I spoke about 5 actionable items that are uncomfortable, that are they're kind of entry-level uncomfortable things. The number one was wake up as soon as your alarm goes off. I mean, it sounds simple, but it starts your day off with a win rather than pressing snooze. So that builds brownie points with yourself. Turn the last 10 seconds of your shower to cold. Now, that's very entry level. If you can't do that, you're probably not going to do other uncomfortable things in your life if you just can't have a 10-second cold shower at the end of your shower. Let's be honest. Fasting, that is hard. It's hard for a lot of people depending on how you do it. That was number 3. Exercise / martial arts / Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's because I'm biased, because obviously I do a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love martial arts, and the overwhelming kind of thing that everybody should do, which is uncomfortable, is exercise in some way, shape, or form. Number 5 was listen or read for 25 minutes per day. They were the entry-level uncomfortable things that if you are one of those people that feel stuck and feel like that maybe you're really overweight, maybe you're struggling with certain things in your life, and you're just struggling with a very, very low self-image, those are some entry-level things. But let's be honest, if you are listening to this podcast and you've been a regular listener, those things are very entry-level. It's kind of like white belt level stuff. If you can't do that, then you're probably not going to be very successful in your life, whatever that means. You're probably not going to be successful emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, in your health, in any way, because they're just tiny little things. I wanted to talk today about some bigger things and some of the stuff that I actually dealt with today. It is Wednesday. I record this the morning before it comes out, so it's super relevant. And I told myself last night, I told my body, I told my mind, I want to wake up at 5 a.m. because I'm going to drive out to a place called Golden Ears, which is a provincial park here in BC. And I'm going to go for a cold dip in the dark. And I woke up at 4:50 without an alarm, which is kind of crazy. Sometimes you can just tell yourself things and then your body will listen and do it for you. So I woke up at 4:50. I got in the car. And this is a perfect example of doing something uncomfortable. It's a Wednesday. I have work in about an hour from now. And it's now 7:33 in the morning. And at 4:50, I got up. I got in my car around 5 a.m. after I put my clothes on and everything. And I drove out to this place, about a 30-minute drive from where I live here in Langley. And as I was getting closer, I realized how dark it actually was. And it's a kind of a little bit of a trek to get down to where I go. And it's actually the first time I've been to this particular spot. I just kind of scoped it out last time I was there. And there was all this kind of fear that came over me. It was very interesting. And it's a perfect example of doing something uncomfortable. And I parked my car and I was like, shit, man, it's pretty dark. What if there's bears? What if there's a cougar that's stalking me and I can't see it? It was fucking crazy. And I got out of my car and I started walking down and I felt hyper vigilant. I felt like, you know how it is. If you're in the dark, in the bush, in the forest, and it's dark and it's just you, your human brain is like, this is dangerous. And it has been dangerous for tens of thousands of years. But we don't deal with big, crazy animals anymore. But there's always that tiny, tiny risk. Anyway, I went down there and I got down by this river and I was standing there and I was like, I don't want to do this at all. And then I had all these crazy thoughts of like, what if I go into the river and something grabs me and pulls me underneath? I'm like, well, number one, it's a river. Number two, there's no such thing that lives in this river. The only thing that lives in this river is trout. It's like, well, what if there's a monster? I'm like, holy shit, dude. It's like, are you that this part of my brain that everybody has and these stories that play will just make up lies. That's what fear is. It's like we're not supposed to do anything crazy or push the boundaries because there's a risk of being hurt. And our brains are not designed for us to thrive and flourish and do amazing things. They're just really designed for us to keep us alive. And you see a lot of that in society. Like you look at that show, like 600-Pound Life. People like need to get lifted out of their house with a crane. It's like that person is literally just surviving, and it's amazing what the body can deal with. Like, or somebody who's been addicted to heroin for like 20 years. It's amazing what the body can do and how much you can treat it like crap and it still will survive. But if you want to go to the next level, then obviously you have to face these fears, false evidence appearing. You have to face these little stories that your mind will show you. And I was facing that. I was like, what if there's a bear? What if there's a cougar? What if I'm being watched right now? I'm like, holy shit. And it was all this mental resistance to me not wanting to go into the cold. But I took my clothes off. I went into the cold water. It was highly unpleasant. I managed to calm my breath down, which is my goal every time I do it. And I managed to sit there for a bit. And then I got out and all those stories were gone. It was replaced with this feeling of like, oh, you did that. It's like playing a video game. It's like I gained another level. I earned respect with myself. What is self-respect? What is self-esteem? It's basically keeping the promises you make to yourself. And if you do that over and over and over again, then you become a very confident person. Another example of this is I went into a jiu-jitsu competition about 2 weeks ago now. And before I got there, I had all these horrible, crazy stories that were going through my head. Like there's this one guy I follow on Instagram. His name is Ben. He was training for a big jiu-jitsu competition. He was a brown belt, so he's very high level, and he broke his neck, and he's in a wheelchair now. And they don't know if he's ever going to train jiu-jitsu again. Freak accident. My brain, before I stepped on these mats with this dude, I was like, what if he broke my neck? What if he breaks my legs? What if I land wrong on my neck? And it created this like hyper anxiety in a way. And I was able to calm myself down through breathing and just really being like, hey, it's okay. Kind of like nurturing myself in a way. But it's just interesting. And then after I got off the mat, I felt like $1 million. It's like this kind of sense of relief. It's like doing the thing that is hard is actually easier than the anticipation and the lead up to doing that thing that's hard. The doing of the thing, it's like you're in the moment, especially if it's like some kind of martial arts competition or whether or not it's performing or public speaking or whatever it may be. It's like, oh shit, I don't want to do this. And you have all this kind of fear, but when you actually go do the thing, it usually disappears and you're in the moment and you've forced yourself to do that particular thing. And then things can flow. And then after you do that hard thing, you come out of it and you're like, that thing was only hard because of the story that I created around it. And that really, really starts making you think like, okay, like I said on the last couple of episodes, like, where am I limiting myself? Where am I a prisoner in my own perspective? So that entry level stuff of like having a 10-second shower, it's time to kind of ramp up the uncomfortable things. Go for it. Go for a 5-minute ice bath dip and then do 10 and see yourself. Obviously, don't put yourself in danger. Don't give yourself hypothermia. Listen to your body. But I'll tell you right now, especially with cold exposure, the first minute or so your mind will it feels like it's like kind of bouncing around my skull. It's like, get out, this sucks, fuck this, no, ow, I don't like this, let's get out, stop, blah 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 blah. And it's like over and over again, like this kind of manic. But then if I can control my breath and I can get centered, this overwhelming wave of calm comes over me where I can sit there for quite a long time. That's just one example of doing something that's uncomfortable. Another thing, say you go to the gym, for example, and you're really into bodybuilding, let's say. Doing something uncomfortable could be like, I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition or a physique competition. Now, whether or not you win or lose doesn't matter. What you will notice about yourself is you'll notice yourself and the stories you tell yourself and all the things that you see about yourself. You'll learn a lot about yourself when you commit to something that's highly uncomfortable like that. It would be uncomfortable standing up in front of people showing off your body. That would be uncomfortable. I've never done it, but I can imagine that would be uncomfortable. If you're in martial arts, go do a competition. Go do some kind of competition and you will learn a lot about yourself. You'll see things where you like, you'll tell yourself stories about why you can't do this or why you can't do this. Or it might go the other way where you might be hyper confident and then all of a sudden you get really humbled. Whatever will happen will be good. If you are in a relationship with someone, go on a couples retreat. Look up couples retreat. That would be uncomfortable because there'll be things that you speak about at that couples retreat, whether or not it's with plant medicines or not. I mean, that's not for everybody. Lexi and I have gone on a couples retreat where it's just her and I, and there was plant medicines involved, and it was fucking wild. It was crazy in a great way. We learned so much about each other. Like I even just get goosebumps thinking about it. And we're probably going to do another one this year at some point. But you can do other couples retreats where there's like other couples there, or it's something like that, something that is uncomfortable and expands and it stretches the relationship in some way where you can dive deeper and love each other more because you can maybe notice some patterns that are in the relationship that you don't like, or maybe you aren't even aware of. And if everything's great in your relationship, then it'll just become more great. If everything's not that great, then it'll become whatever it's supposed to become if you go on something like that. It's just go do things that are like that are out of your comfort zone. And for some people, I don't think you'll be listening to this, but if some person's like really stuck with anxiety, they can go back to listen to number 4, episode 4. I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to people that are already kind of on the path, whatever that means to you. And you want to start taking things to the next level. For me, one of those things this year is sitting with a particular plant medicine that honestly scares the fuck out of me. It's very well known. Everybody talks about it these days. It's ayahuasca. And I've wanted to do that for quite a long time. I just haven't felt ready. So for me and my journey and my path and what I want to do is one of my goals this year is to do an ayahuasca ceremony. And it looks like it's coming together and it'll be in 5-6 months from now. And that when I think about that, there's a lot of kind of things that come up and I feel highly uncomfortable because I know based on friends who have done it and very close friends, it was an intense experience, a beautiful experience, but an intense experience. So for me, that's one of the things I want to do this year. Another thing I want to do is I want to compete in jiu-jitsu as much as I possibly can. Another thing I want to do is to expand my relationship with Lexi and go on some couples retreat, whether or not it's with plant medicines or whether it's not. It doesn't matter. It's just doing these bigger, uncomfortable things rather than just the entry-level stuff. Now, every day it is good to give yourself a little dose, a little kind of hit of discomfort. And that might be doing something new. It could be going to the gym. It could be what's uncomfortable for some people is, here's a challenge. Here's an uncomfortable thing to do. Don't touch your phone. Don't have any music on. Sit down and close your eyes for 10 minutes and just focus on your breath. That's hard for me to do. My brain wants to get distracted. It wants to kind of escape from that. And I have to force myself to sit there and do nothing. Like, when was the last time you actually just did nothing? No TV, no podcast, no music, no conversation with anybody else, no background noise. Just sit there, you and yourself, and do nothing for 10 minutes. There's so many distractions right now with everything, with social media, with Netflix and YouTube and whatever, and work and play and your kids and your wife and your husband or whatever it may be, your dog, your cats, whatever. But if you can sit there for 10 minutes and do absolutely fucking nothing, you'll learn about yourself. Things will come up, especially if you just keep focusing on your breath. If you get caught up in your mind, you feel yourself going down rabbit holes, bring yourself back to your breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth, in a circular, rhythmic kind of way. If you do that for 10 minutes, it'll blow your mind what can come up. So there's all these things, like there's obviously the entry-level stuff, 10-second cold shower, fasting, exercise, but start expanding that. All these different areas of your life, whether it's your health, your relationships, your spirituality, your emotions. Somebody who maybe isn't as touched with their emotions, like highly uncomfortable, might be going to go get therapy or something like that. Or people that are drawn to it is going to some kind of women's weekend or men's weekend or some kind of version of that in some way. Highly uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I challenge you to go past these entry-level ways of seeking discomfort, because on the other side of that is freedom. It's freedom. It's freedom from the prison of your own perspective. And that's all that I'm seeking. I want to be free. I used to think that being free was if I made a lot of money and became a multi-millionaire. And I'm starting to realize that that's not what it is. It's like, what I created in my mind was like, oh, that must feel like you're free. But it's like, what if you could create that feeling and you didn't need the money to do it? What if that feeling was already there? It's just you need to get rid of all the shit that is stopping you from feeling that feeling. Because life will give you people and circumstances over and over and over again to show you where you are not free. So by doing these highly uncomfortable things that might seem not uncomfortable to somebody else, but might seem very uncomfortable to yourself, you constantly are expanding and growing and creating more room for more freedom in your life. Hope this helps, guys and gals. And I'll see you next week. And I really want to hear about things that you are doing to expand your life and to create more freedom and doing uncomfortable things. So reach out to me on Instagram, Lynch-potter, and I'll talk to you next week. Love you guys. Bye.